I am very, very excited to welcome Mayra Casas Jackson tonight. I met Mayra at an event here in Cincinnati, and she was telling me all about her work, and I was like, you need to come talk to Red, White, and Blue. So I'm really happy this has come to fruition. She is the executive director of the Immigrant and Refugee Law Center here in Cincinnati. Before her current role, she led the center's school and community outreach program and represented individuals requesting humanitarian relief before the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. She's a native of Peru and she came to the U.S. in 2003. She worked at the Legal Aid Society of Southwest Ohio for 10 years and also at the Cincinnati Hamilton County Community Action Agency as their very first immigrant liaison. She's been a board member for the League of United Latin American Citizens since 2012 and is currently on the board of Planned Parenthood of Southwest Ohio. Thank you, Myra. Appreciate all of that work. She has a bachelor's degree in tourism management and studied law in Peru. So I'm going to highlight you and let you get started.
Thank you so much for the invitation, guys. I'm so happy to be here. First of all, I'm Peruvian. I have an accent. I really like to share my message. So if you don't understand something I say, please don't be shy and ask me to repeat it. I'll be happy to do it because I think the information we're sharing, it's very important. And I'm so happy to see so many of you interested to learn on what's going on and how you can help the community and your neighbors, because that's the people we represent. As the director of the Immigrant and Refugee Law Center, we provide free legal immigration services. And let me share my screen because I told Julie earlier, I love to talk, so I get distracted and I don't share my screen. So can you see my screen? Perfect. So we'll discuss a little bit about the work that my organization does in the greater Cincinnati area. So the Immigrant and Refugee Law Center provides free legal immigration services to refugees and immigrants in our area. We represent them with Immigration Court and with the Immigration Office. The people we serve, as you know, are your neighbors, are people that are taking care of our kids and elders. They work at restaurants, they open businesses, and they contribute to the cultural richness of our communities. But yet they are among the most vulnerable in our communities. They are often facing a very cruel and harsh immigration system without a lawyer in a language they do not understand, while carrying the trauma of what they have fled and the fear of what could come next. So, of course, we're so against deportation and everything that's happening, and we'll discuss more about that. And what I want to share with you is a little bit of Immigration 101, the basics of immigration, because we believe that's very important. Many people that we talk to don't understand how complicated this system is. And we keep hearing a lot, why they come here illegally, why they don't come here the legal way like everybody else, or they wait in line like everybody else. And we'll discuss about all of that in my presentation. Because again, I think to be a truly welcoming society, a welcoming community, we need to understand all these reasons and why people are coming to the US. So I'm an immigrant myself, so I have experience firsthand with the immigration system in the good and the bad. So I will just give you some very, very basic definitions of immigration that many people know, but you will not believe how many people are unaware of the definitions. As you know, a US citizen is someone who is born in the US or someone who naturalized and became a citizen. It is not an easy process. It is a very, very long process. In order for someone to become a citizen and have all the benefits that a citizen has, like voting is something that only citizens can have. If any other immigrant votes, that is illegal, and that will automatically bar that person from ever becoming a citizen. So again, when we hear in the news about all these undocumented immigrants voting in the elections, it's very, very unlikely. In the very few cases we find that happening, it's mostly out of not knowing the rules and someone who did not do their job checking that whether they were authorized to vote or not, and that has rarely happened. Now, who is a permanent resident? A permanent resident is someone who has a green card and has been allowed to live and work legally in the US for as long as they want. To get to this step is absolutely very difficult. And it could be through a family member That means that I have to have a parent who is a US citizen and is filing a petition for me. I have a child that is over 21 years old and is filing a petition for me, or I am married to a US citizen or a green card holder and they file a petition for me. Or as a US citizen, I can file petitions for my siblings. So that's where the whole idea of the waiting list comes from. Because if as a Peruvian citizen, I file a petition for one of my siblings, currently immigration is processing applications for Peruvians from 2007. That means that my sibling is going to wait about 17 to 18 years to come to the US. That's the very famous waiting list people talk about. But remember, to put my name in that waiting list, I have to have a US citizen relative that will sponsor me, a direct relative. For countries like Mexico, India, Philippines, that waiting list is even longer. Immigration is processing applications from 2001. So we're talking that my sibling is going to wait 24 years to come to the US. And again, that's the only waiting list that exists. Other ways to get a green card is through employment or humanitarian remedies. So when I say through employment, I cannot just go to any US embassy and say, hey, I'm a hardworking person. I don't have any money. I don't want to live here because of poverty, because of corruption, because of violence. I want a better future for my family. I want to work in the US and pay my taxes. What visa can I apply for? That doesn't exist. I cannot do that. Unfortunately, if I am poor, there is no path for me to come to the US legally. And we'll discuss more about that later. But what happens if I have money? I have a lot of money and I want to invest in the US. And then I can go to the US embassy and say, hey, I want to apply for an investor visa because I have all these millions of dollars that I want to invest in the US. Then the doors are open for me because I have money and I'm going to come and invest in the US. Or I have kids, I have a lot of money and I want for my kids to go to a school in the US. The same way I'm going to go to a US embassy and apply for a student visa and send my kids to come and study in the US. And as you probably have heard in the news, international students pay full tuition, which is one of the greatest source of income for many universities in the US because international students pay full tuition. Again, to get one of those visas, I have to have the money to afford studying in the US. When we're talking about people that are escaping poverty and violence, they are mostly from very poor countries, where we are talking that a basic monthly salary is between $100 and $200 a month. So there is absolutely no way they will be able to afford paying a tuition for a university in the US. Now, maybe I'm very smart. If I am very, very smart and highly educated person and the US wants me here, there are ways that I could come here as well, even if I don't have much money. But again, I have to have some qualifications that will allow me to come to the US and obtain these visas. In some humanitarian remedies, it could be, like when the US decides, for example, to allow 3 or 4 years ago, to allow Afghans to come to the US after the US removed the troops. So that the US created a way for Afghans to be able to come to the US. Or maybe many years ago, Afghans that worked with the US Embassy, they were able to obtain SIV visas. So they were able to come to the US and get a green card. So they are very complicated process. But again, I cannot just go to an embassy and say, I want to apply for a green card. How much do I pay and what paperwork do I complete? That doesn't exist. I have to have a reason to get a green card. Now, having a green card doesn't mean that I cannot be deported. Anyone can be deported in the US but US citizens. So I can have a green card for many, many, many years, 50, 60 years. I can be deported if I commit a crime. And the standards of crime are way higher than any US citizen. Let me just give you an example. One of my clients, a young kid, he wanted to apply for his citizenship, 21-year-old, and he got a ticket. It was a very bad traffic ticket. He was going 120 on a 75. So that was a very bad thing. And because of that, he was not able to get his citizenship. He wasn't placed in removal proceedings because the officer has the discretion to decide whether they want to do that or not. And that officer decided not to. He just denied his citizenship. But just that mistake that many US citizens will make could lead to a deportation. Now, of course, if the crimes are related to drugs or higher crimes, it's very likely that deportation will be open against that person, regardless of how long they've been in the US. Now, permanent residents are eligible to some public benefits if they have meet certain requirements, like being residents for 5 years. That means that for 5 years, they've been paying taxes, and after 5 years, they could get certain benefits depending on the states that they live in. They can live out, they can travel outside of the US, but not for long periods of time. If they travel for too long, they can lose their status. And they cannot vote. Legal permanent residents cannot vote in the US. Remember, only US citizens can vote. Now, who is an undocumented person? There are so many ways you can become undocumented. It's not just people that are coming through the south border or through the north border. I can come here with a visa. It could be with a tourist visa. It could be with a student visa, and I overstay my visa and I become undocumented in the US. So somehow I violated my status. Is there a way that I can know if someone is undocumented or documented? Of course not. So when all the things we're seeing, if, for example, a landlord doesn't want to rent a house to an undocumented person, to an immigrant, just because they assume it's undocumented, that's discrimination. So I have no way to know that someone is undocumented unless I review their paperwork and their immigration status. Undocumented immigrants are not eligible to work in the US. They are not able to adjust their status. That means applying for a green card is very, very, very difficult, and in many cases impossible. Even if they are married to a US citizen, even if they have US citizens, it is very difficult for them to apply for a green card. They are absolutely not eligible for public benefits. Now, this may change state by state. There are some states that are a little more generous and will allow them to have medical benefits. I live in Ohio and in Kentucky, where I work, undocumented immigrants are not eligible for absolutely nothing. And I know we heard in the news that undocumented immigrants are receiving this check as soon as they cross the border, that they are giving them a $9,500 check. None of that is true. None of that is true. And if you have any information that's different, please let me know, because my clients really need that money, but apparently we didn't get the memo where to get the check. However, as everyone in the US, undocumented immigrants have constitutional rights. They have access to emergency services, such as hospitals and shelters. Kids have access to educations in schools, not higher education, but they can go to schools. And we will discuss more about this later, but everyone in the US has constitutional rights, regardless of their immigration status. Now, as I told you earlier, it's very difficult for undocumented immigrants to get legal status. Very, very difficult. In most cases, and I listed some of the main immigration remedies here, and as you can see, the common thing is that they have to be victims of horrible crimes in order to get a status in the US. U-Visa, an immigrant has to be a victim of a crime and cooperate with law enforcement in the prosecution of the crime. There is a list of crimes, so it's not just any crime. It has to be somehow of a violent crime. VAWA is for victims of domestic violence by their US citizen spouse or their green card holder spouse. Again, remember, as I told you earlier, if I'm undocumented, even if I'm married to a US citizen, I will not be able to get a green card through my US citizen spouse. But if I'm a victim of domestic violence and I have proof of that, I could be able to get a green card. Asylum. This part is very important because this is something we have been discussing a lot lately. So asylum, when someone comes to the US, it doesn't matter how, you have 1 year to apply for asylum when you arrive in the US. And in order to apply for asylum, you have to show that you are suffering persecution in your home country due to your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership to a particular social group. So everyone we've been seeing coming through the south border, they are asking for asylum. And it is not just people from Central America. We are seeing so many people from Africa, from Asia, that are walking through, they are traveling to Nicaragua and walking through Central America and going through so many horrible and violent things to make it to the south border to ask for asylum. So it's very important to say that for the past 12 to 13 years, people are not crossing the border illegally and being arrested and put in jail. And that's all the immigrants we're seeing right now. That is not what's happening. People are not crossing the border. People are going to the border, to the port of entrance, and they are stopping at the port of entrance and asking an officer that they want to apply for asylum, which is the legal way, the only legal way for poor people to be able to come to the US legally. So when I go to the south border and ask the officer for asylum, the officer will conduct something that is called the credible fear interview. And this officer is an expert. They know about the conditions of my country. They are people that have been trained to read body language, to see when someone is lying or when someone is telling the truth. They are experts. So this person will conduct an interview, a credible fear interview. And if the officer decides that I do have a fear, that I'm afraid to go back to my home country, then I'm going to be allowed to come to the US, but I will be immediately placed in deportation proceedings. So I will have to fight for my asylum case in a court. Now, when the immigrants go to court, unfortunately, it's a very cruel system where the immigrant is treated like a criminal without the right of an attorney. While on the other hand, ICE, whose job is to get that immigrant deported, is represented by a prosecutor. So an immigrant who is not represented in court is automatically in disadvantage because he's fighting, or he or she is fighting their case against someone who knows the law. And the law in the US says, even if you go pro se to court, you are subject to the same rules as if you will be represented. So that right away, it's absolutely cruel for someone who has no representation. And they have to, remember I told you, they have to submit this application within 1 year. Private attorneys in my area are charging an average of 12 to 15,000 to represent you in an immigration court. That is a lot of money for someone who has left absolutely everything behind and have zero money to be able to pay an attorney. And that's why organizations like my organization are very important, because we are trying to make sure immigrants can navigate this complicated system with dignity, because everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. So the other remedy we have for children is something called the special immigrant juvenile status, which is available for children that were victims of abuse, neglect, or abandonment. So again, as I told you, the common denominator here is that you have to be a victim of a crime in order to get legal status. Of course, these are not the only remedies available. There are some others, but these are the most common. Now, temporary protected status, again, as the name says, this is very temporary. These are designations that the government, the president decides whenever they want to support a country. When something happens in that country, it's a way for the US to support that country. For example, when we remove our troops from Afghanistan, President Biden approved temporary protected status for Afghanistan. That means that all Afghans that are in the US before the date of the designation are able to get a work authorization that is good for normally 18 months, 18 to 24 months. And then if the president decides, they can renew this work authorization. We have some temporary protected status for some countries like Honduras since 1999. So these are people that had this status for many years, but they are not able to get green cards. This is something you probably heard in the news that our current president has ended temporary protected status for Venezuela, for Afghanistan, for Ukraine. And we probably are going to start seeing more and more of these as the dates of renewing temporary protected status are approaching. So that's another thing we have to be dealing with. And as I told you, with for example, with Honduran citizens, many of them had TPS since 1999 because that's a requirement. You had to be in the US before 1999 to get this status. So these are people that have been living here for so long, that have US citizen children, that are part of our community. So it's going to be very hard if we see terminations for countries like that. So let me go back a little bit though, guys, because I've talked to you about asylum, but something I want to touch is about refugees, because that's another change we have seen with this government. This government has completely shut down the refugee program in the US. The US is not welcoming refugees anymore. In the world, we are the #1 country that welcomes refugees, which is a program that has worked so well and it was very well implemented. So historically, refugees meet kind of the same criteria as asylum. There are people that have been persecuted because of their race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. But the United Nations is the middle person. The United Nations is the organization that assigns a country as a refugee country. So they come through United Nations. United Nations has all kinds of vetting programs before a refugee can come to the US. The refugee cannot choose which country they want to be resettled to. They are told which country they are gonna go. Now, if they have some relatives in the US, that might play in their favor so they can come to the US. But once the US says, we're going to receive 60,000 refugees this year, in addition to all the vetting the United Nations did, the US is going to do even more vetting on top of that. So no one has been more vetted than a refugee before coming to the US. Only, and this is very sad, only 1% of refugees in the world will be resettled. 90%, 99% are going to die in a refugee camp. And if you ever have a chance to go to a refugee camp, you can see generations that have spent their entire lives living in a refugee camp. So that is something we are advocating really hard for this to change, so the US can welcome refugees again. And again, seeing that we have seen refugees coming from South Africa, when some of the refugees we've been working with had their tickets to come to the US and they were told you are no longer allowed to go to the US, has been absolutely cruel for the people we're working with. We have so many refugees that we've been helping them to apply for their relatives so they could join them here. And suddenly all of that is on standby right now because no refugees can come to the US. So that's really terrible. So let's talk about deportation now, because that's what we've been seeing, and that's what Julie told me we want to discuss tonight, and we want to see how can we support our neighbors and our friends with what's happening right now. So of course, I have you know that we're so against deportation, because deportation is not just removing a person from the country. Deportation shatters families, traumatizes children, and destabilizes communities. So in many cases, we are talking about people that have been living here for so many years, people that have US citizen children, people that are, as I told you earlier, they are working, they are contributing to our economy, they are starting small businesses. So it's people that are part of our communities. So it's absolutely devastating to see people being deported. Um, Earlier this year, the vice president said that their goal is to deport 1 million people a year. And this will be the cost to deport 1 billion people. 1 million people is $88 billion that we're going to invest in separating families and deporting people. So now here for me it's very important to say that when we advocate for immigrants, we are absolutely not advocating for people that commit crime. And that's true. If you come to this country and you do not follow the rules, unfortunately, you'll have to pay the consequences of your poor decisions. We all agree that we need secure borders. We all agree that we want to know who's coming to the country. But we absolutely believe that there is a humane solution to the problem that we're having right now without the need to go through these mass deportations and family separations. We do need the immigrant workforce in the US. We absolutely need them. And there are ways that we can fix this problem in a very humane way where everyone will benefit. Employers will benefit from keeping their employees. The economy is going to benefit because we're not going to spend 88 billion in deporting people, in addition to the taxes. Undocumented people pay taxes, and that is something many people don't understand. The IRS doesn't care about your immigration status. They just want you to pay taxes. So the IRS actually created a way for undocumented people to pay taxes, which is called the ITIN number, the individual taxpayer identification number. So if I'm undocumented, I apply for that number, which is very similar to a social security number, but it is only for tax purposes. So once I apply for this number, I pay taxes. So this information we have is from 2022, where undocumented immigrants pay $96.7 billion in taxes. From this money, 32.3 billion went to Social Security and Medicare, which, as you know, undocumented people will never, ever benefit from this money. So again, remember, $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year, and this is the money we will be losing in taxes nationwide. Now, of course, we are going to be affected because there are about almost 12 million undocumented immigrants in the US. The household income is about $388 billion, and our spending, it's about $299 billion every year. In 2023, we have paid $89 billion in taxes. Again, and that's another myth, that everybody thinks immigrants are coming here to live off the government and to take from us, which is completely the other way around. Immigrants are here contributing to the economy and contributing to the communities. As you can see here, these are the main areas where immigrants work. And this is something many people, I don't know if they don't see the way we see things, like a lot of immigrants work in the agricultural sector, in the construction business. So if we go to the supermarket and we are able to pay $1.99 for a pound of tomatoes, it's because we have immigrants working very hard with very little pay, which that is also unfair, and that's another issue. But because of their hard work, we are able to pay $1.99. If we do not have immigrants working in the farms, then we're going to start paying $6 or $7 for a pound of tomatoes. And when that happens, it's going to be too late. So we need to do work now. We need to pressure for some changes now. The same thing with the housing business. House is very expensive, but somehow it's still affordable because immigrants are working in the housing business, in the construction business. And you are probably seeing now so many testimonials. We do have so many employers coming to us because they are losing their employees. And not only because their employees are being deported, because of everything that's happening, their employees are afraid to go to work, or their employers were authorized to work legally in the US, and suddenly the president terminated their status with very, very little notice. and these employers are losing their employees, and they have no path for the employer to be able to sponsor their employees or do something to keep them working for them. So it's not just, again, as I say earlier, it's not just families being separated and kids being traumatized. US citizens are being affected. Our economy is being affected. And sooner or later, all of us are going to be affected because directly or indirectly, we all benefit from immigration in the country. Uh, Cincinnati, based on the latest census, our population growth was 98% because of immigrants. Otherwise, we will be shrinking here. In 2023, 53% of the small businesses open in Cincinnati were opened by immigrants. So, and these are things that I wish, and I beg you that you are here on my presentation to share that information. These are things people don't know, and we're hoping that if they are more aware of this information, maybe that will change the way they see things, so they can see more why we're fighting for this. So again, we've discussed about the family separation and the impact of mass deportation, the loss of workers, all the sectors that are going to be affected, the taxes. But what a lot of people are not talking is the higher cost for local governments. As I said earlier, many of these families are in mixed immigration status. They have US citizen kids. And these are kids that have never depended of welfare or anything because mom and dad were providing. So if suddenly you take the breadwinner away from that house, these are US citizen kids. The ultimate sacrifice that breaks my heart, but these parents will have to do, is to leave their kids here because they don't want to take them back to the countries that they were escaping from. They don't want to take them back to violence and to corruption and poverty and gangs and drugs. So they are going to leave them here. And then these kids will have to become dependent of welfare. In many cases, they are going to end up in the foster care system. And these are US citizen children. So that will mean more cost for local governments to support these kids that absolutely did not need this type of support. And the only reason why they are in the system is because their parents were victims of cruel policies of this government. And that's why we are working very hard on Know Your Rights. We want to prepare our community. Unfortunately, we have to talk to them that they have to be prepared for the worst. So when the worst happen, we at least have taken proactive steps to take care of our children, to take care of their assets. Immigrants are very hardworking people. Many of them buy houses, they have cars, they open businesses. So they have to make sure someone they trust will take care of their kids and will take care of their properties. So if you visit our website, we have this information available in 4 languages. If you need physical copies and you are near me, I'll be happy to give you some copies of the booklets. What we're talking to the families is, one, understand that your rights, everyone in the US has constitutional rights regardless of their immigration status. Their right to remain silent, the right to ask for a warrant, that no one can come to your house or to your car without showing you a warrant. What to do if they encounter the police, when to answer, what to answer, and when to remain silent. That they have the right to call a lawyer. Again, with immigration, they don't have the right to have an attorney provided by the government, but they have the right to pay their own attorney. And to refuse to sign anything they don't understand, because unfortunately, ICE officers will try to trick them into signing documents that will be a voluntary departure or where they are waiving their right to go to court. We are teaching them how to recognize a proper judicial warrant because many of us have never seen this document. So we are giving them copies so they can keep a copy of this on their back door so they recognize when an officer comes to ask for this document without opening the door, to ask the officer to put the document on a window or under a door where they can see it. and to make sure that this warrant has their name, the correct address, and it is signed by a judge, not an immigration judge. It is signed by a local, state, federal judge. What the ICE officers will bring is this order of deportation, which it is a valid document, but this is an administrative order. This document does not allow ICE to go into their homes or to go into their car. In 99% of the times, this is the only document ICE is going to have. So we are teaching them to recognize this document and to exercise their right. If the ICE officers do not have this document, they don't have to open the doors. And I know we received a lot of criticism from the government for doing this, but what we're doing is legal. We are teaching people about their rights. Then we're asking them to be prepared to prepare a family plan, which again is really hard to tell families, to tell parents, say you need to make sure you find someone to take care of your kids when you are so capable of doing it yourself. But again, you're a victim of these cruel policies. So make sure that you sign a power of attorney for someone to take care of your children if you're arrested. And preferably this person has to be someone with immigration status. If that person doesn't have an immigration status, then you need to design, like you need to have at least 3 people and have a discussion and see what are the priorities, who's number 1, who's number 2, who's number 3. The same thing for your assets. In this part, as you know, when you talk about money, that's when you really get to know people. You have to be very careful because you are giving someone the power to have access to all your finances, to have access to your bank accounts, to have access to your home. So you are hoping that if you are deported, that person is going to sell your home and send you the money. But if you're outside of the country and they don't send you the money, how do you fight that? So there are very, very difficult decisions they have to make. To memorize a phone number, these days we no longer remember phone numbers, and they are not going to have their cell phones to call somebody. So we tell them, memorize your phone number, and the person you're going to call, that person needs to know who your attorney is. That person needs to have all your information and your kids' information and your family information. Do not call your attorney, because that one call you have, if you call your attorney, it's very likely they are not going to answer the phone. But that person, your emergency contact, will know what to do, and you have to discuss this beforehand with that person. Talk to an immigration attorney. I know it's expensive in many cases, and unfortunately, when we're dealing with a vulnerable population in vulnerable times like this, is when we also have to be dealing with the bad people. People that are trying to take advantage of their situation, their desperation, that are charging them so much money. We do have notaries that are signing the power of attorneys for our clients, charging them $100 for every piece of paper where they put their stamp, which is absolutely ridiculous when you go to a bank and that will be free, or $2 at the most in Ohio. And that's why we are, in my organization, we are having like walk-in clinics where clients can just come and talk to an attorney for 30 minutes. And a lot of them are not going to have a remedy, but at least we can tell them, hey, if you are arrested, you do not have an immigration remedy. Do not waste your money paying a private attorney. Instead, you save that money and take it with you from when you are deported. We wish to help everyone, but as I told you earlier, someone who is undocumented in the country is very, very difficult for them to get a legal status in the country, unless they were victims of crime or we have some special circumstances. And for them to know your rights, right? Like we discussed earlier, about not opening the door, about your right to remain silent, about your right of not signing documents that you do not understand. Oh, God, I went quick, right? I have so much to talk. Let me just stop sharing so I can see all your faces. So we are working with our families. We want to make sure our families are prepared. There are so many things, as you know, that have changed with this president. We are dealing with the travel bans and many people that cannot come in the country. We are dealing with so many rules that have changed. One of the rules that are very cruel, until before January 20th, if someone was arrested within 100 miles from the border and they could not show that they have been in the US for at least 2 weeks, they were subject to expedited deportation. That means to be deported without going to court. This president has changed that. And now if you are arrested anywhere in the US and you cannot show that you have been in the country for at least 2 years, it's not 2 weeks anymore, it's 2 years, you are subject to be deported without going to court, which is absolutely terrible. Some of the other changes we have seen is that the government is cutting any federal funds for organizations like us to provide legal assistance for free to immigrants, which is absolutely crazy, especially when a lot of the money that we were using were to represent kids that were here without mom and dad. And now what we are seeing is if a child is going to court without an attorney, they are asking them, hey, do you want to go back home? Of course, the child will say, what else am I going to do? So they are making them sign a document for them to go back home. And the children are signing the documents, not knowing what it is. And then they are sent home where places where maybe they don't even have their parents anymore, places they were escaping from gangs, and now they are back to that. In 2014, 2013, when we saw a big wave of children coming to the US from the south border, it was crazy. It was crazy. The Office of Refugee Resettlement that was working with the kids was pretty much giving children to whoever wanted to sign a document saying, hey, I will take care of a child. So what we started seeing was so much human trafficking and exploitation. Right here in Ohio, we had so many cases of a poultry farm that was working with kids between 14 and 17, paying them $50 a week. The kids were not going to school, and that's because the Office of Refugee Resettlement wasn't doing their due diligence to check who is taking these kids. It was just, if I sign a paper, I get a kid. So back then, President Obama created this program. So when a kid was released, they were immediately connected to legal services like us or organizations like us nationwide. So our job was to make sure this child, not only that the Office of Refugee Resettlement was doing their due diligence to make sure the person who is receiving this child is a good person without a criminal background or anything, but as soon as they were referring them to us, we were making sure that these children were going to school, they were receiving medical care, and we were working with these kids for many years. And now that is a money that he has taken away. Now, my organization, we are working very hard, and we are getting private donors so we can keep doing that. But there were so many organizations that depended on this money and had no choice but have to close the program. And it's absolutely devastating for children. And again, adults, somehow we will survive. But children are the most vulnerable of the most vulnerable. So it's really sad to see what's happening to children. It's really sad to see children being arrested and being handcuffed. And that is probably the part that is the most upsetting for us, because we understand the law. In our law, we would like it to be more compassionate. It is very cruel. We have to follow the law. We get that some people are not going to get an immigration remedy, but the part we absolutely disagree with is the added cruelty to that and the inhumane treatment, absolutely inhumane treatment to the people we are arresting or the people ICE is arresting. Like handcuffing children, what's the need? And you may have heard in the news, this was very recently in Cincinnati, we have a child who just graduated high school. He's been here since he was 8 years old. The mom and the family applied for asylum. Their asylum was denied. They appealed. The appeal was denied. And in 2023, they were ordered deported. So what happened with each president can change the priorities of deportation because the president is the boss of immigration. Immigration is under the executive power. So back then, President Biden said, well, if someone is ordered deported and that person doesn't have a criminal background, do not execute those deportations. Just leave it like that. Leave it like a deportation, but do not do anything. And that's why this family was able to stay. But they were checking with ICE every so often, so ICE knew where they were. And that was our fear when this president came, because those were the low-hanging fruit, the people that already has outstanding deportation orders. And that's exactly what has happened. They are coming after that people. But what happened with this family? The mom and two kids, and the oldest one is 19 now. So mom and the 16-year-old went to their ICE check-in, and they were given ankle bracelets, and they were given 30 days to leave the country. So mom got notice, and she was given time to prepare for her to leave the country. Then, because Emerson is 19, he was treated like an adult, and he had to go to a separate appointment. And at this appointment, they arrested him with no reason, no criminal background, a really good kid, and they kept him in jail for almost 3 weeks. And at 19-year-old, and you agree with me, he's a child. He's a child that has been traumatized for the rest of his life, with absolutely no need to do that, to give him that inhumane treatment to this child, because they could have given him that ankle bracelet, and that child could have planned his trip back home, a place that he doesn't even remember, with his mom and his sister, which, by the way, the mom and the sister are back home now. So they were planning to leave once they were given those 30-day, the 30-day notice to leave the country. So that's the part we don't agree, that there is so much cruelty. Again, we agree that there are laws, that we have to follow them. We are fighting for those laws to be changed and to be more compassionate and more welcoming, because we need to understand the reasons why people are coming to the US. You know, and I say we, am a naturalized citizen, but we're very lucky that we were born here, where we don't have to choose where we have the choice whether we want to live. If we want to leave the US, it's because we want to have a sabbatical, we want to experience another culture, or even, guys, we have the luxury to say, I don't like this president, I'm gonna leave the US. And that's a privilege. Many of the friends and people that are coming don't have that privilege. It's not a choice. Nobody in their right minds will grab their kids, walk through Central America, and go through despicable things. Many women we talk to have been raped. Many people die. They don't even make it here. Nobody in their right minds will do that if there will be a legal way to come to the US, right? But there is no legal way when you are low income, when you just want safety and protection, which is a human right. And again, we insist that there is a humane solution to this problem. And again, I thank you so much for having me here and letting me talk. And I hope that everything I'm telling you tonight, you share with more people, and more people understand how big this problem is, and we can be a more welcoming place. And I know Julie told me to stop at 8:15, but I told you guys I like to talk so much, so you had to stop me.
There's a lot of questions in the chat, though, so we need some time to answer them.
Yes, yes. No,
There
let's go to
are.
the questions.
There are a lot of questions about ICE and what they can and cannot do legally. Someone asked if they could be masked, or are those just Proud Boys or some, January 6ers or, that kind of folks. Can they legally smash car windows? Can they break into your home? How much power does ICE have is basically what all these questions boil down to.
Right. And the sad answer is, under this administration, there are really no limits, which is absolutely despicable. It breaks my heart. When I first came to this country in 2003, I remember vividly calling my father, and because it was my very first presidential debate I ever witnessed, and it was Bush and Al Gore. And it blew my mind, coming from a third world country, to see the order and the respect and how everyone followed the rules. And it was a dream. And what I see now, I feel like I am back in Peru when I live under a dictatorship, which is terrible. So did I think that should happen? Absolutely not. They should be able to identify themselves, because I don't know anymore. Like, are you truly ICE? Are you truly an officer? Because we have seen impersonators now that unfortunately are motivated by hate to just attack people because of their color, which is absolutely horrible. But with this president, unfortunately, all those things are acceptable now, and they should never be.
How do folks find programs like yours in their communities? Because we got folks on here from all over the country.
Absolutely. I will share with both Julies a link for this site that has a very detailed state by state, a list of free services like us in every place. Yes, let me write it down and I'll send that to you.
The red cards, there was a discussion in the chat about the red cards. Do they really help? Do they do any good with so many people being taken when they state their Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights?
Historically, they were a great tool to have. Right now, again, we are seeing eyes that are just, like you say earlier, breaking in windows without a warrant, which that should not happen. But at least if we can document that the person wanted to exercise their right to remain silent and they were forced in their car, and we can document that, that gives us the tools to be able to fight, whether it's in their immigration case or whether it is a fight for them to return because they didn't have due process. So it is helpful. But again, we are dealing with things that we have never thought we were going to deal with in this country.
So about green cards, there is a discussion about them as well. How does a green card expire? Does it have to be renewed? Can it be reinstated?
So the legal permanent resident status is for your entire life, but the green card itself, it lasts 10 years. So you have to renew it every 10 years so you can have the physical card. But remember, just because it's legal permanent status doesn't mean that you cannot be deported. You can still be deported. And sometimes, as you know, it's just a matter to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and have the wrong skin color for you to be accused of a crime.
For many years, we've seen, like on TV and in movies and things like that, that if an immigrant married a citizen, they get citizenship. And that's been kind of like a pervasive idea that folks have believed. Is that still true? Because this person that wrote this question says so many military personnel have immigrant wives. But is that a safe haven for folks?
No. So there are two levels of immigration. If I came here with any type of visa, with inspection, I came here with a student visa, with a tourist visa, anything, but I was able to go through customs, I was checked, and I was allowed in the country. I came here with inspection. If I came here through the south border without any type of visa, I came here without inspection. So if I was inspected, even if I overstay my visa, because I was inspected, I'm on a better place. So if I marry a US citizen, I will be able to get a status. But if I came undocumented, absolutely difficult. My US citizen spouse will have to show that I will have to ask for forgiveness first because I'm subject to a 10-year bar. I will have to go back to my country for 10 years before I'm able to get a green card. In order to ask for forgiveness, I will have to show that if your government don't forgive me, my US citizen spouse will have an extreme and unusual suffering. And it cannot be financial, it cannot be emotional. It has to go beyond that. I will have to show that my spouse, maybe before I met him, he had so many health issues. He was going to the ER like every 6 months because he had nobody to take care of him. But after we got married, I make sure he has his medication. He's doing great. His visits to the ER went to almost 0 a year. If you deport me, my US citizen spouse will suffer so much. And if I take him to my country, he will not be able to receive all the medical assistance that he gets here. So that's a good shot. I could get a forgiveness for that, but those are extreme cases. So if I'm just married to a US citizen and I'm the breadwinner of the house and we love each other so much, there's no chance that I'm going to get a forgiveness. I will be banned for 10 years when I leave the country.
Wow. If a legal permanent resident didn't update their residential address for a couple of years and now wants to update their address, is there a chance that that will get them flagged for deportation?
Very unlikely, and I would recommend, if they have not done that, to do it ASAP, because this administration is trying to grab anything they can to put you in deportation proceedings. So by law, you have to report your address within 10 days of moving. We have never seen anybody placed in deportation proceedings because of that, but it is a cause of deportation. So let's don't do anything that can put us at risk of deportation.
Julie, I know that we're at time, but there are two questions that I think need to be asked. Is that okay?
Go for it.
So the first one, a couple of folks asked about that Supreme Court decision from yesterday, 6-3, that people can be deported from countries that they're not from. That was really disturbing to me as well, because, you know, it leads me to believe that they could take anyone and send them anywhere.
It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy because I'm sure you guys follow, like, the people that were sent to El Salvador, 260 people accused of being gang members.
Mhm.
And the reality is that only six out of 260 people were gang members. 135 had zero criminal background in the US and in their home countries. And it's not only that they are being deported, because normally the US has deporting people always, always. And the deportation is, if you commit a crime in the US, you go to jail, you spend your time in jail, and then you are deported to your home country, and you let your home country decide what they want to do. But now they are being sent to a jail. Innocent people being sent to jails without due process. So we don't know what's happening. We don't know if the people they are sending are being, you know, if their rights are being respected. What they are saying, that's absolutely inhumane and a violation of civil rights. We are seeing tourists coming to the US, and there was a case of two girls, I don't remember the country, I'm so sorry, I think it was Germany, two young kids that came here, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, and they just wanted to travel before going back to school, and they had one-way ticket. And the government assumed that they were going to stay. Historically, they have the right to think that, and they will say, you know what, you're not allowed in the country, go back home. But no, this time they had to put these young kids in jail before letting them go back home with zero crime, but just the fear of the ICE officer, of the custom border patrol officer, thinking they wanted to stay in the US undocumented. Then just let them turn around and go back home. What's the need to traumatize these young kids by putting them in jail? It's cruel. It's so inhumane. And what we're doing to people, sending them to countries where they are not from, without knowing what's going to happen, that is just so cruel. And the lack of compassion, it kills me.
So, what's something that we can do? What, you know, everybody on this call, you know, what are actions that we can take?
I love that. You know, first of all, let's educate our friends, our neighbors, our communities. Let's make sure they understand how crazy this system is. If you can help families completing the power of attorneys form for their kids and their assets, that's so helpful, because again, we have notaries and people that are taking advantage of our communities. So if you can organize events where you can help families with that, like, of course, those events have to be very low key, no advertisement or any of that, because you don't want to attract the wrong people to those events. If we can, you know, teach people about their rights, you know, teach people this is what a warrant looks like and what you should look for. And let's organize our communities. We have our neighborhood here in Cincinnati, it's called Northside. They even have a map in a way how the community is going to act if ICE comes to their neighborhood, which I love it, because you can see the compassion and the love in this community. So they have a way to communicate if they see any of that. So, and we have seen videos where communities are stopping ICE from doing, just from the cruelty, right? There is no need for 20 people to come and arrest that 19-year-old, that, of course, that 19-year-old is going to fight 20 officers, right? So the community, we need to show support. There's so much love. There's so much compassion. In love is going to win. This is unsustainable. And I even think some people in the government is realizing now, oh, by doing this deportation, we are not just affecting immigrants. We are now seeing very upset employers that are losing their employment, but very upset farmers that have no employers. That's what we've been talking all this time. Every one of us are going to be affected with these deportations. We need them here, and there are humane ways that we can work together and fix this problem. Again, we all want secure borders. We all want to know who is here, and there is a solution to this. We just need to talk, and we need to talk with love and compassion, not with hate because of the way you look or the color of your skin.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This was very informative. Folks are saying you need to speak to Congress in the chat. Everybody loves the presentation.
You got a lot of love in the chat, Myra. Everybody thought this was
Thank you
super
so
informative.
much.
I learned a lot, so I really appreciate your time. But anyways, thank you, Myra, so much. And
thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful, guys. In any time, I'll be happy to come back. I'm very passionate about this, and I love that people care about what's happening, and that really re-energizes our job, our work.
I can guarantee we're going to have you back. So, all right, we will talk to you all later. Have a very good evening.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys.